Once again, I would like to say good evening. My name is Rashid Williams. I am the manager of post-secondary outcomes for the KIPP through college program at KIPP Jacksonville Public Schools here in Jacksonville, Florida. And so I want to thank you all for joining us for this important webinar about securing the bag, evaluating financial awards. And so I'm going to jump right in. Before we start, you'll notice that majority of you all, you're already on mute. Thankfully, my colleague Jeff has muted everybody. We want you all to stay on mute the majority of the time so that we don't have any feedback or any background noise as we go through the webinar. Please type in questions into the chat box on your screen. I know as you go through this, there may be a lot of information that I cover, and I don't want you to have to hold on to your question to the very end, but we won't respond to questions until the end. But you can go ahead and chat those questions in as we go along through the webinar. I ask that you please be attentive and respectful of everyone else who's trying to be on this webinar with us. And so here's our agenda for tonight. We'll go straight into meeting our KIPP through College Jacksonville team. We'll look at understanding the award letter and the key vocabulary that comes through that process. We'll look at our award letter analyzer. We'll look at our student debt guidance for loans, scholarship resources, big takeaways from this webinar, and then we'll display information of how our students and families can set up, and our visitors who's on this call can meet with us to gain more insight into the information we cover tonight, or just to talk to us about anything else related to financial aid. And again, before we even start out, we have more than just our KIPP Jacksonville families and students on the line. We actually have some guests throughout the country. Thank you all for joining us. We hope that this is a lot of helpful information to you all as you listen on. And so meet the KIPP through college team here in Jacksonville. My director, Dr. Allman, is the one who leads us and provides the overall strategic planning and leadership for our KTC program. She manages our college partnerships, and she's the one who supports myself and Mr. Pierce as we do our jobs working with our students. And again, Mr. Pierce is our manager of college placement. He works with our 9th, 11th, and 12th grade students and is responsible for ensuring strong transition to high school and for managing the college match process with our juniors as they go into their senior year. And again, I'm Rashid Williams, the manager of post-secondary outcomes. I mainly support our 10th graders as well as our college-age alumni who are out. We have 2 cohorts of students who are now in college. And I'm also responsible for helping our students who are in the military, those who have chosen to go into the technical or certificate programs here locally, and those who are out in the workforce already. And so my colleagues are actually on this webinar with us, doing some of the background support as well. So let's jump right in, understanding the award letter. And so when we think about the award letter, if you're like me, if you're a parent or a student and you've actually seen your award letter, there's a lot of terminology that may look foreign to you. In fact, that even may start when you started completing the FAFSA. There's a lot of information and you're like, I see all these acronyms, I see words and terms that I'm not too familiar with. And so before we even look at some examples of award letters, I wanted to touch on some of that key terminology. And so as you'll see on this chart, we have the actual award letter term. We have what another term that you may have heard that's being used to refer to that term that's in the first column. And then we have the practitioner definition. Obviously, the practitioners are those who are in the financial aid arena, and maybe some college advisors, even high school counselors who do support students through the college match process and with financial aid. And then students who are on the call. That last box is for you guys with that student-friendly definition, so you can kind of process it in your own mind what these terms actually mean. And so I won't go through the entire part of this chart. I just want to hit mostly the student definition for these terms, because we want to make sure we make this as user-friendly for you guys as possible. So starting with our estimated family contribution, EFC. This is literally what they're looking at as what parents and students are able to contribute towards their college experience. And so you'll see in that student-friendly area, it is the minimum amount of money that you and your parents will be expected to pay for this year of college. Colleges and scholarship organizations will use your EFC to figure out how much financial aid you are eligible for. So for my students on the phone, parents, and other colleagues, you again, if you've done the FAFSA for your student already, you already seen these numbers come back when they get that student aid report. And so the next one is our cost of attendance, or COA. This is also known as the sticker price. And again, that last column, the cost of attendance, is different for each school, and it represents the full estimated price of this college, what the college should be for that student based on what school they attend. And then we look at direct costs, which is our billable expenses. Again, in that last column, these are the charges that you will directly see from your college. Things like classes, tuition and fees, paying for your dorm room, and meal plan is considered underneath that room and board as well. All right, some of our other key terms: indirect expenses or miscellaneous costs. These are the costs or things that you should keep in mind that you will need to pay for throughout time, like books, your cell phone bill, car insurance, um, health insurance. If you're a student who's already, under your parents' health insurance, you're waiving that right for insurance through the school. So those are those costs that will go into indirect expenses. Net costs is the net price, right? We all have heard of net price before, but admittedly, net cost is what you will owe by August 1st if you're starting in the fall, and in January once you start the spring semester. And it looks at, in addition to your loans for that year. I want to really hit that. That's in addition to the loans, and we'll talk about that more when we get into our award letter analyzer and talk about how we break these costs down, these charges down. So estimated bill, unmet need or gap out of the pocket expenses. This is an estimated bill. The estimated bill is what you will owe your college. Half will be due by August 1st. Again, if that's the fall, the other half will be due in January when you start the spring semester. And so this sheet is looking at different forms of aid that students will receive through the FAFSA, or through also through scholarships that you may receive from the institution that you're going to attend, or any outside organizations. So gift aid, again, scholarships, grants, free money. Scholarships and grants are free money that you never have to pay back. You will not see this money. You will not see this money as if it's going straight to you. It's going straight to the college in most cases. And so that way, and organizations will ask you like, hey, can you go ahead and literally just tell us what school you're going to be attending, and we'll get in contact with their financial aid office and make sure we send the funds over. Next term, subsidized and unsubsidized federal Stafford loans. I really want to hit this one because, again, if you've gotten that your student aid report back from the FAFSA, or you even got your financial aid award letter from a particular school that you applied to and been accepted in, you've probably seen these two on there. And so the main thing I want to hit is subsidized loans are loans that do not accrue any interest while the student is in school. Again, I want to stress that subsidized means there is no interest accruing or growing on that loan while you are in school. The opposite is for unsubsidized. Unsubsidized loans, as soon as you get that loan that first semester of your fall freshman year, it begins to get interest over time while you're in school. And so by the time you're finished with 4 to 5 years getting that undergraduate degree, you're going to have that loan plus that interest that's compounded on there when it's time to pay it back 3 months after you graduate. Whereas with subsidized loans, the only value you would owe is the actual amount you borrowed from that subsidized loan. And we'll talk about that again as we go further on. We look at some examples of some financial aid award letters. And so lastly, work study. This is another opportunity that comes through your FAFSA, and you probably saw it when you filled out the FAFSA. You get a chance to check the box. Hey, are you interested in work study? Some of you may have said yes, some may have said no. And so what you don't want to do is you don't want to say no, you want to say yes. You don't have to take work study. It's an option, but it's a great option to have as a student. Again, we'll hit on that by the end when we get to our key takeaways. But essentially what work study is you get an on-campus job in a certain department, and they'll actually pay you bi-weekly with a check going straight to you as a student. Parents, you wouldn't see that money. It would literally go directly to the student. And it gives them a chance to have a job on campus, to network and build relationships with other people on campus, but also gives them money that you don't have to worry about providing to them while they're in school. And last but not least, we have outside funder scholarships. Again, the reality is, students, I want to stress to you, please look for outside scholarships to actually fund your time in school. Don't leave it up to the fact of waiting on the school to offer you merit or other academic scholarships, because the reality is, as much as you can get, even if it's $1,000, if it's $500, $250, any little bit counts towards making sure you borrow less money to go to school if you have to borrow money. I mean, so the PLUS loan, I want to stick on this a little bit as well. The PLUS loan is a loan that's offered to students through, again, through the financial aid process, but it's literally for parents to have to fill out. As you'll see in this section, it says PLUS loans are federal loans that parents of dependent use to help pay education. Parents must agree to apply for these loans, and they must be approved. So they look at your credit, parents, when you actually fill out for a PLUS loan. So what are you saying, Mr. Williams? Well, depending on your credit score, that would depend on the amount of funding that is being provided, or if there will be funding provided for you to take out on behalf of your student. The other side of that too, parent, is that loan, you are now responsible for that loan. Whereas with a subsidized and unsubsidized Stafford loan, is on the student to repay that once they graduate. It is on you, parent, to pay that if you take out a Parent Plus loan. And so we always want to make that clear with our parents when we advise them. Is like, yes, the school is going to offer you that plus loan because it's a good way to fill that unmet need or that gap once all the other aid is applied. But we want to make sure you know exactly what that loan means and who is responsible for that. So moving on, we'll touch on Parent Plus loans a little bit more in this webinar as well. So award letter analyzer. So you might look at this screen now, and this is an example of what an award letter might look like if you've not already received one from an institution. Many of you might have already seen this, even in your personal time as a student when you were in undergrad, right? So they send it in the mail, but now with the advancements in the technology, a lot of times they'll just send it through a student portal for students. So parents, you may get one directly by mail, but you also may be told by email to log into your student profile and go check under their financial aid section to actually see what funds have been awarded to your student. But for the sake of this, I wanted to show you all this one because this is just a good example of one way you might see a award letter coming to you. If you can see, this one is broke down in 3 different levels. You have the estimated award eligibility, which contains all the different grants, the different scholarships that they might have received from the institution or from just a federal grant. You also have the work study that's in there. You have their outside scholarships. And if you see at the bottom, you have those direct subsidized and unsubsidized loans, right? And so then they break it down into the average cost to attend that school, which includes the tuition and fees, your room and board. And at the end of the day, you get down to the last section, and it says the estimated remaining balance once you see those costs minus that financial aid and what you are left with as far as that gap. And we'll talk about that more again. That is that gap between what now you, parent, and students are responsible for paying to attend that institution. All right, and I'll zoom in just a little bit more if you couldn't see the numbers, and I'll give you guys like a minute to kind of peruse over it and look it over and just see some of the costs that's on there. All right, so I also included another one. Again, I wanted you all to see just a couple examples of how financial aid award letters may show up in the mail or through email from the different institutions that you've applied to. And so on this one, as you can see, they broke it down a little bit different. They had their direct charges paid to the actual university, the other expenses right next to it. Then that next level, you have the source of the aid that that student is receiving, and they broke it down into fall and spring semester to come to the totals that you see here, estimated direct total, and then the estimated remaining balance, where again, just like the previous one, you see them taking out the cost to attend for that year with all those fees minus the financial aid, and then you're left with an estimated cost to attend. And so parents, if you're like me, that is a significant amount of money to see pop up at the bottom of that sheet. But that's the reality of what we see sometimes in these award letters. And so again, the main point I want us to really understand how we get to those numbers. All right, and so our award letter analyzer at KIPP Jacksonville Schools in our KTC office, we literally use a form similar to this to sit down with our parents and our students and to take those award letters and literally break them down number by number, category by category, so we can make sure when you all leave us that you have a very clear understanding of what all the fees are, what's all the aid you'll be receiving, but also what that estimated cost of attendance will be at the end, and what you're left with to have to pay when that student steps foot on that campus day one in August 1st. And so you see it's broke down at the top under cost of attendance. You have all your fees that most schools will have. You have a combination of some direct and some indirect costs. I want to point out, as I'm looking at those costs, parents and students, you can control the cost of some of these. What do you mean, Mr. Williams? Well, when you look at room and board, you'll have options of what dorms you want to stay in on that campus. And of course, some of your more flashier or extravagant form of dorms may be a lot more costly than those that may be just your basic setup of a room for you and your roommate to be in there sharing a space with 2 beds and 2 desks and a chair, 2 chairs, right? And so when you look at those options, you'll see that the actual cost for each of those dorms are different. So again, you can control that as a cost. Same thing with the meal plan. Obviously, the school is going to show you the Cadillac of all meal plans, because advantage of it. But as a student, you got to meet with your parents and say, do I really think I'm going to eat 3 times 7 days a week on campus? Chances are you're not. You may only be on campus enough where you might partake of 1 meal, whether that's breakfast or lunch, and then the rest of the time you're either eating in your dorm room or you're out with your friends going to get something at a local eatery close by the school. So those are the conversations you can have with your student and your parents, so you can come to what is actually reasonable, so you can control those costs. And again, transportation, obviously, if you don't have a car you're taking on campus, you don't have to worry about a parking decal or anything like that. So those, you won't have to worry about gas money. So those are costs, again, you can control. Jump down to the bottom section. As we see, we got it broke down here with the different types of aid you'll get: Pell grants, SELG grants, university grant scholarships. So we take into account all of the free money that you'll be receiving as well. And then work study sits alone, because most schools, they'll show you the work study money in there, but it's actually not counted in the aid sometimes, because until that student actually works those hours for that work study position, they don't want to count it in the total aid that the student is going to be receiving. So let's jump into our student debt guidance for loans. And this is literally what the terminology we use to try and work with our students and families to make sure that you know exactly what you're borrowing and to know how much you really do need to borrow. So rule number 1, borrow only what you need. We recognize that many of our students will need to take out Stafford loans, whether that's subsidized and unsubsidized, to cover the cost of attendance to go to college. Students should only take out the amount they really need and nothing beyond that about borrowing amount. And so here you see at the bottom, the first year, most students, and you've already seen, again, you might have seen it already in your student aid report, in your FAFSA, year 1, you're offered $5,500 at one time. And that's actually broke up in between the fall and the spring semester. So that's the total value you'll be able to get in loans for that first year. Then second year, it bumps up a little bit to $6,500. And then years 3 through 6, $7,500. Obviously, in our opinion, if you were able to make it that first year on that $5,500, unless something has happened to you or your parents' income and some things have gotten tight, don't exceed that amount you took in year 1 if you don't need to. Again, We want to borrow only what we need and nothing more. And so the second rule is reduce your annual unmet need. Again, we saw in those financial aid awards, when you see the direct cost minus the financial aid, whether that's loans and scholarships, you're left with that estimated cost. That this is how we advise students. If you're under $2,000 left, once all that is calculated, that's easy. That's more manageable. You can actually work if you needed to, and actually, keep a part-time job or your work study, and be able to manage that 2,000 or less. And we also emphasize, hey, you might want to go home during the summer and work and save money and use that towards paying that for the following year, or even before you go to your freshman year. You guys are going to have time, hopefully, once we get through the restrictions with COVID-19, you can actually get back to work and work during the summer and start saving up money. We also stress the importance of applying to outside scholarships. Right now, there are plenty of scholarships through fraternities, sororities, different organizations, different companies. This is a time while we got this space, students, where you should be literally trying to do at least 2 or 3 scholarships a day, to be honest. And hey, worst happen is you do 10 for a week and you end up with 2. You've done better than what you had when you started the week. All right, looking at our next category, you got from $2,000 to $5,000 of unmet need. So this is where we start to proceed with caution. It is attainable, but it requires strategic planning on the student's part, and I would say the family's part. And the steps to cover that unmet need may include that Parent Plus loan we talked about. That should be the last resort. Definitely not taking out any private loans from any institutions, because again, the interest rate on those will be 10 times higher than what you're going to pay for a federal student loan through the federal government. You got summer earnings again, work study, and you can also set up a tuition payment plan with the institution where you pay a certain amount each month to try and knock that balance down as well. And so last but not least, this is where we hate to see any student sit, is when they have an unmet need of $5,000 or more. And I think we saw that on the second financial aid award letter I showed you guys earlier. Anything over $5,000 is just a lot to try and take in as a parent, right? And so if let's say you apply to a school in your city and you still have that $5,000 or more, maybe you could look at commuting on campus versus staying on campus in the dorms, and that'll take some of the money out of there. Of course, obviously, you wouldn't need to worry about a meal plan for that, but still, that could cut some of that cost as well. Another way you could look at it as you could actually speak to the financial aid office and say, hey, I'm local. Is there any way are there some other costs I can shave in the process? But be honest, we also use the option to the right. We really tell students and parents, seriously reconsider going to that school, because that's a lot of money. And so let's just think about that. Let's say you have an unmet need of $10,000 for that year. That school 4 to 5 years. That's every year you're taking that unmet need of $10,000. By the time that student graduates, this is in addition to the student loans you may have already be taking to go to the school. So you're adding an additional $40,000 to $50,000 on top of what you're already borrowing for student loans. And we definitely don't want students leaving deep in debt for an undergraduate degree, especially if you plan to pursue any advanced degree beyond your bachelor's. So rule number 3, consider your future starting salary. So tip number 1 is what we tell students is the total amount you borrow should not exceed your expected salary for the first year after graduation. So again, if I'm talking now, if I have any students, let's say like myself, you want to become an educator, I can candidly say I don't mind sharing my first year as a teacher, I made $39,000. So if I was coming straight out of undergrad, definitely didn't want to have an accumulation of student loan debt that exceeded that $39,000, because now that puts me up against the wall of trying to pay majority of what my monthly income is going to be towards those student loans. And again, once you get out of school, once you graduate, 3 months after you graduate, the federal government, Sally Mae, whichever one you go through, they're going to be reaching out, expecting you to start making payments. So our rule of thumb is your monthly income, your loan payment should only make up less than 15% of your income, monthly income. Again, less than 15% of your monthly income should be going towards student loan repayment once you get out of school, when you make that first, when you get your first job. So tip 2, how can I figure that out? Mr. Williams, you can use the student loan calculator on the link below on Big Futures on their College Board. You can literally go in and begin to estimate how much money you're going to borrow each year and see how much that's going to total. And you can start looking like, hey, I know I want to be a physician or a pharmacist, or I know I want to be an engineer, and you can see what the starting salary for that position is based on what you're borrowing and how much your payment will look like. Again, the more knowledge you know going in, the better prepared you are for your future. Scholarship resources. First and foremost, there are a plethora of different scholarships that are out there. Some are academic, some are athletic, some are community service based, some are based on your ethnicity, whether you're a minority, some are specifically for women, some are based on a talent you might have, whether you're playing an instrument, whether you're an artist, a visual artist, whether you dance and you're in performing arts. And there's interest based, even to the point of like, I'm into knitting, and there's scholarships for that. Even if you're a person who's left-handed, there's scholarships for that. So a lot of it is you have to do the search, and that's what is, you should be looking for scholarships throughout your time in college. I can't stress that enough, students. Anytime you got a break, whether it's during the summer going into your freshman year, during the Christmas break going into your spring semester of your freshman year, you should be looking for any way you can get, again, any value is worth something to actually help you pay for college. We believe in the mindset of as much free money as I can get that I don't have to pay back will offset how much money I have to take out and have to pay back later. All right, and so I gave a couple of examples of some areas where you all can look for scholarships. For those of you all who live in the state of Florida, you got your Florida Student Scholarship and Grants Program, or Bright Futures for those who know. You have College Board, where you actually sign up for the SAT. They actually have a scholarship component on their website as well. You have Raise Me, FastWeb. You have the UNCF, United Negro College Fund. My colleague Jeff told me something yesterday that just blew my mind that I didn't know when I was in college, was you don't have to go to a HBCU to get access to those funds. You can actually be going to another school. Again, if you fit the criteria for some of the scholarships they offer, you can have access to them. And then I definitely want to stress, check in with your high school counseling office. I know some of the ones here in Jacksonville, they actually have scholarship boards by their office or within their office where they're posting scholarships left and right. Go stop by, check in, ask your senior counselor if there's any that came by. I know we on a district, the district web email serve, they sometimes send out a plethora of just different scholarships that are open to students, and the value can range from $500 all the way up to $10,000. So check in with your high school counseling office as well. So big takeaways from today's webinar. I want to stress again, you do have control of some of the costs for college. Room and board, meal plan, books. Again, I wish we had all the resources you guys have at your hands when I was undergrad. You can actually rent books online. You can purchase them used online. You don't have to go into the bookstore and pay full value for a brand new book. Also, you may know somebody you meet once you get to the college who might have already been in your major and has already taken those classes. You can get books from them as well. And sometimes you can go to the library on campus and actually get a loan, take a book out on loan and actually get what you need. So you got to be strategic and got to be resourceful when it comes to cutting some of these costs. Don't be afraid to reach out to the financial aid department at your college or university to request more funds. Literally, there are different guidelines that financial aid officers have that they can play with to get you access to more money. But of course, if you never ask, you don't get what you don't ask for, right? And so only borrow what you need. You should be looking for scholarships again throughout your time in college. Again, I can't stress that enough. Never stop looking for scholarships. Make sure you apply for your work study through the FAFSA. Again, you don't have to take it once you get to campus, but it's a great resource to have. Please renew your FAFSA every year. Please renew your FAFSA every year while you are in college. A lot of times I have to go speak to my students who are in college and remind them when the FAFSA goes live in October 1st, like, hey, go ahead and renew immediately. Don't wait to the last minute, because a lot of the institutional scholarships that are available at your college may have a deadline. And the sooner you get that FAFSA in, the sooner you can be considered for some of those scholarships at your school. And so, to our students who are here locally in Jacksonville, but even our guests who are on this webinar with us, with the COVID-19 restrictions and us having to practice physical distancing and staying at home, we want to start offering virtual hangout and office hours to our students and our parents. And so we'll be doing that on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 2 to 4 p.m. Please go to the link at the bottom, and I believe Dr. Allman is going to post that in the chat box for those who want to click on and actually go ahead and set up. Again, 2 to 4, from that 2 to 4 window, we'll be doing 30-minute meetings with you all, parents again, or students. And then from 4 to 5, we want to do a virtual hangout where we're going to just jump on Zoom, my team, Mr. Pierce, Dr. Allman, and you can pop in and literally just say, hey, I had a question while I was doing this, or I had a question earlier. Can you guys, answer this for me? Again, that's to anybody on this webinar or anybody you may know who has any college-related questions or even high school-related questions, with Mr. Pierce working with the majority of our high school students. And also, you see my contact number and my email on here, as well as Dr. Allman, who also works with some of our seniors as well. And so I just want to say thank you all for joining us.